Yeah, so we're working out all the kinks, and I'm so grateful that you're being my first guest because there's a lot of kinks to work out. So
Yeah,
thank
well, I think it's mostly with, for some reason, my computer and
uh,
and
well,
then and
yeah.
then of course I'm trying to get Asher because they don't have school on Tuesdays, so I'm trying to get him settled with like a TV
Oh, geez. This was the
because
terrible day for us to do this.
our house, like if he walks around the house upstairs, I can hear him stomping. So I was like, you know what? If I just put him on a show, he won't, I won't even hear from him for the whole
It's
time of
how
school.
we get everything done,
Yep.
right? This is
Hmm.
how we do it.
Yep.
We are here to talk about what it looks like to be an accidental executive.
Okay.
Right? Where,
Yeah.
so, you know, by nature of what you're out to do and accomplish and everything, you find yourself in a position where you are leading a team of people, right? And so I am excited to have you here. And this is, I really hope, one of many times that you're going to be here because I've learned so much from you. And I know that like when you and I sit and talk, I feel like the energy, just the ideas, the creativity, the innovation, I always leave with better ideas and, just feeling really excited. Okay, so we're going to explore the journey of leaders who never planned on becoming executives but found themselves at the helm of thriving businesses like yourself. Today, I have my friend Sandra Grasti. She is do you go by Chief Operating Officer?
I go by, we tend to go by co-owners, but
Fair
yeah,
enough.
I would be the chief operating officer.
Yeah. Of Beck and Call Home Services. It's a growing handyman business here in Roanoke that she co-founded with her husband. And what makes your story, there's so many things about your story that I just love, and we're going to get into it. And then I'm going to come back to you later for future episodes and say, let's talk about this particular topic. But today, I really just want to get into hearing a bit of your story because I think it's so remarkable that you built this company with Joshua while homeschooling your kids. And I want to dive in a little bit to how you got there, how you balance family and leadership, and even just what we were talking about a second ago. Even just to be able to sit and do this call, right? There are things they have to do because one of your kids, or one of them is home, right?
All three.
All three are home. So,
Only one is, needs more management, but
right,
yes.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so so tell me a little bit about yourself, going back to maybe even sort of one of the things I loved about our conversation the other day was hearing about your work journey up until you became a mother and stayed home with your kids.
Sure. Okay, so I started out before I took a break in college. I went to college, took a break about halfway through, and started working kind of at an entry level position in an office, recruiting for IT stuff. And this was like 99, and so there was just a huge tech boom, and so that's where I got my start was recruiting and staffing. Had experience with working with my parents. They've always been entrepreneurs and had businesses. And so I had good administrative skills, even though I was 19 or 20. Um, I was well qualified. And so I went into that position and was just there for a year, stopped in order to go back to college. And I went to college that second time with in mind that I would do ministry. And so I majored in Bible and missions basically. And so did that and went into full-time ministry. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, 4 years, and then met my husband and went back into administrative work and also human resources. And so I had always wanted to have kids, be a stay-at-home mom. And so I didn't have huge career aspirations. At that time, I did work in recruiting. And so, there was it wasn't entry level anymore. But after a little while, I got pregnant and I just ended up doing more entry level work again, just because it was easy to pop in and pop out. And
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
I've had just lots and lots of administrative experience, just doing random jobs and sometimes in human resources. That's my main corporate experience. Then after I started having kids, for a couple of years, I really didn't work much at all. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what stay-at-home moms do. They just stay home and they don't have jobs. But around the time that our daughter was born, she's our second child. I don't know. I guess I had been a stay-at-home mom for about 2.5 years. And I just started having these like um, ambitions for to do something in addition to being a stay-at-home mom. And I started a long journey through years of trying different things that would be compatible with the schedule of, being up with your kids and taking them to preschool and going on play dates and trying to coordinate, find something that would work with that. And it was usually entrepreneurial. And so I gained a lot of experience with honestly just trying a lot of different types of digital marketing, online businesses, nothing that was real successful, but I learned so much. I feel like I sort of have a got a I don't want to they say like you went to the college, the school of hard knocks or something. I feel like it
Mm-hmm.
was just all these it felt like failures, just like roadblocks, a lot of it being I don't have time or bandwidth for this.
Mm-hmm.
And but I learned so much and we moved to Roanoke and started our business simultaneously, moved back to Roanoke. And a few months before that, Joshua, my husband, had said, it was in the middle of COVID, and he said, there's a huge opportunity right now with homeschooling. Why don't you do something with trying to lead and mentor moms who are homeschooling, who need to learn more information, who are starting out? And so I started doing that with a focus on a particular type of homeschooling because it's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that, for the first time, I felt like had some pretty serious traction. I was gaining a following. I had an active Facebook group, which was part of the community building strategy. And then, I was excited about this. And then we ended up moving and starting a business a few months after that. And I couldn't do it both. I was already homeschooling and, then we're trying to like make an income for our family. And I knew that that was not going to be something that was a strategy to create a full-time income. Not in a quick way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so we moved to Roanoke and started handyman. At the beginning, it was just a handyman business. We did get a contractor's license, and so now we do remodels and larger projects. But
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, and for quite a long time, it was just phone calls and relational marketing on social media, where people are making posts, and I would respond and say, "Hey, you said you needed a fan replaced. We can do that."
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that. And so I was very actively involved in building the business, creating the website, getting us a presence on Google and the internet. And so our kids at the time were, I think they were fifth grade, second grade, and then Asher was just 4. And
Mm-hmm.
so I am not great at I'm really good at hyper focus. So it's either hyper focus on homeschooling or hyper focus on this business. It's hard for me to really juggle both.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really took a lot of, I think probably for the first time in my career and my adult life, I really had to learn, okay, well, these are both really important. Our kids have to be educated. And at the same time, we really need an income. I mean, we got to live, got to have food.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized how imperative it was that I figure this out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that was a real beginning to a journey in just growing myself because I mean, as hard as it is to be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool, which was never a walk in the park, it didn't feel as critical because I wasn't contributing to our family income. It was
Mm-hmm.
like now I've got these two things that are, I don't even know if I could say they're equal importance, but they're both really important.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I've got to figure out how to shift from one to the other and back again. So, but one thing that has really helped us is that we ended up having, as I think a lot of areas, hybrid schools were developed quite a bit during this time in many cities, and
Mm-hmm.
Roanoke is no different. And so there was a hybrid school that they started attending just 2 mornings a week, the older two, and then the younger one, he went to preschool. And that gave me just a little bit of breathing room to say,
Yeah.
okay, well, there are things that I just cannot focus on when they're around.
Right.
So those would be the times when I would make sure those happened.
Right.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it was just over time, they got older, they can manage themselves better as far as schoolwork now. And they go to school. The older two go to school 3 days a week. Actually, the younger one goes to school 3 days a week as well. But I'm very hands-on with him on the Tuesday and Fridays that he is home,
Hmm.
I don't do much work at all because I'm, helping him gain his reading skills and his math skills and his
Yeah. Yeah.
doing read alouds. And so it is a huge balance, but I have become more adept and I've learned a lot about just how when we practice things, our brains become more flexible. And
Mm.
so I've learned that I am capable of switching back and forth. It's never comfortable. I really have to make an effort sometimes to say I am not going to continue doing this because the child has to learn to read, but or vice versa. But I have become more flexible in being able to do that.
Hmm.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
There's so much that I'm hearing here. One is going all the way back to you grew up in an entrepreneurial home. So you were exposed early on to this approach to work, which was start something, try something. And if it works, keep with it. And if not, try something else, right? Or
Right.
different ideas. And then you had a series of jobs before you had kids
Hmm.
in HR, you learned skills. And I know because I know some more of the story, how much of that has come back around as you have started running your own company. And so you picked up skills here and there, and then you stayed home. But even as you were home, one of my big takeaways from our last conversation was this idea of doing what you can when you can.
Hmm.
So yes, being a full-time stay-at-home mom has constraints. There are times when you might want to get something done, but for whatever reason, you've had to pivot away from your plan for the day. And yet you were finding times and finding ways to exercise kind of that entrepreneurial spirit, but also just the creativity that was necessary from trying to figure out, how can I contribute financially? How can I hustle up some income while continuing to prioritize this? So there's just so much going on there. So when did you start thinking that and knowing that you were a leader? Because there's a difference between being an entrepreneur, which you've always been very entrepreneurial, but there had to be a shift at some point because now you have a company, you have employees, you have contractors you manage. There's a lot going on with Beck and Call. At what point in time did you start thinking like a leader?
That's a great question. So when we first started things, it was just Joshua and I. Pretty quickly, within a few months, we started having part-time helpers. He would have a helper, I would have, an admin helper. And I do think that I've always had a leadership mindset, even with the kids, and prior to that, there are some people who tend to be a little more intentional about, I mean, every parent, I think, or most parents find it important to instill things in their children.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I'm the one who the kids are going, oh, Mom, we're having a family meeting, or, because
I
it,
love
it
it.
can just be organic, right? I have to like make a
Yeah.
plan and, do a system. My brain works that way. And I've always had the idea that if there's something that's not working, then I can probably change something about what I'm doing to change it,
Mm,
even
mm,
if it's external. So I think the first thing that comes to mind as far as leadership in our company is when we started having helpers and things would go not perfectly because there's humans involved, and I would think, oh, what is this is so annoying, like this isn't the right person, and very quickly would shift to there's something that we're not doing
mm,
that we could be doing better.
mm,
um I need to be training these people better. I need to be creating hiring processes so that we're finding the right people and knowing that they're a good fit, or having a really strong idea that they're a good fit before they even have their first day of work. And so I leaned on the human resources experience I had, and had a lot of call screening and interviewing experience, and really trying to determine like who's a really good fit for whatever company I was working for at the time, and applying those to what we were doing. And so it's so funny because with that, I would often talk to people on the phone who I was interviewing for our company, and they would say, "How many people do you have?" I'm not, sometimes they would say, "I'm not really looking for a career," and I would have to tell them, "Look, it really is just my experience in human resources. We're a very small company, but we take building our team really seriously."
mhm,
And so, because people were thrown off by the fact that we had this hiring process that was very streamlined. And so that was a big part of it was just realizing, we get to pick. And then when we choose the people who seem like they're a good fit, you put on your good big girl pants and you tell them when things aren't going right, or
Yeah.
you apologize when you've maybe miscommunicated. Or so
Mm.
for me, there's been a lot of uh, getting a thicker skin, learning that when you would have your not only your family's income on the line, but your employees' incomes on the line,
Mm.
you realize you can't just coast through and keep peace when something's not going right, let's say. And I don't want to be just like doing whack-a-mole
Hmm. Hmm.
with things that are not smoothly going along. And so
Hmm. Hmm.
so we have really tried to be proactive and say, okay, this is how we do things. This is we're going to train you in this. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but for me, and it's always also been a sort of a self-leadership thing where
Yeah.
I don't want to just coast through, and I want to do what I'm doing well.
Yeah, no, there are several themes that I just heard come out of that I really want to highlight because I think anyone who's listening who maybe is a stay-at-home mom who's envisioning perhaps someday, running a business, there are several things that you just talked through. One of them was this idea of a growth mindset. You didn't use that phrase, but that's what you were describing. And it came up earlier in our conversation that, it would be very easy to just say, I am hyper focused. I don't do two things well. Like I really can only do one thing well at a time. But you said that's not an option because these are two really important things that we're going to do. And we've chosen to homeschool and we've chosen to start a business. And so I'm going to grow. And I know, and from knowing you, I know that you are constantly pursuing opportunities for growth, whether it's books that you're reading, workshops you're taking, classes that you're taking, you're always learning and always developing. And so I think having that growth mindset is so key that, I can change, I can grow. I may have a tendency to be whatever it is, whether it's, whatever it is. But you're saying I'm actually going to not let that keep me from doing this. But the other thing that I heard you say, that I really want to highlight is this deep sense of ownership that you have taken ownership for your company. And it's not just being a company owner, it's taking ownership for your team and ownership for your mistakes and ownership for how you set things up. And on that, you hire for culture. One of the things that I love about Beck and Call Home Services is that I remember one time Joshua, I talked to him at the end of a workday, and he mentioned that it was time for him to leave the home that he had done this service in, and it was almost like they didn't want him to go because they were having such a great conversation. And I know actually the first time that we met, but I hadn't ever conversed with Joshua. I'd never had a conversation with him before. And I ended up hiring him or hiring your company to do some work at my parents' house.
Mhm.
And that was the first time that I met them there because I think my dad was at a treatment or something. And so I met Joshua at the house so that I could show him what he needed to do and all that. And at the end of it, he and I stood there and talked. We got into a lot of deep things. I'm not even going to mention all the topics we got into. I don't want to get in trouble here, but we may have talked politics a little bit. We may have gotten into a little bit of religion. Um, but I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, this guy is really cool, really neat. And I think what I'm trying to get at is your company is known not just for being excellent at home services, but you have a culture of being really engaged people.
Mhm.
And your customers, your clients look forward to you coming to their home to work because they enjoy conversing with you. And so I think having that culture and knowing that every person you hire, especially those who are going to be out in the field, is representing your company.
Mhm.
So it is important to hire for culture. And so you're not just looking for people with technical skill, although they do need to have good technical skill, but you're also looking for people who embody something of the greater kind of the culture that you're creating there at your company. And then I just love, again, hearing you talk about your own self-leadership and how important it has been to you to grow and learn. What are some of the sources that have really shaped you, whether it's books or workshops you've taken, things like that?
The things that come to the top of my mind are recognizing around the time my oldest son was diagnosed with ADHD, and then having sort of a journey of realizing like, oh, I think he got that from me, and I
Hmm.
think I got that from my dad. And so I think prior to that, there was sometimes a sense of like, this is just the way I am. It stinks, but I lose things all the time.
Hmm.
And actually being able to say, no, there's actually a list of characteristics that have some solutions that you could, you can capitalize on the strengths and you can make adjustments to the weaknesses. And so that realization and then some of the things that I've learned about have been really, really helpful. So there's a book called Organizing for ADHD. I don't remember if I've told you about this one.
You have. I'll put the
Okay, we'll
title.
find it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that was it's called Smart but Scattered. And I
Hmm.
think that one I did mention to you
Yes.
years
Hmm.
ago. And it's really primarily about for parents of children with ADHD, but it was so helpful for me to realize that many of the sort of I hate to say accommodations, but it's accommodations to make for yourself to say, you know what, this is the way my brain works. Like I need to have a plan for this
Yeah.
because it's going to happen,
Hmm.
so for example, if it goes from everything professional to very personal. One of the things I do is I put my skincare products right on my dresser. Why they're on my dresser? Like it was outside of the box for I would never have considered doing that. They don't go there. They go in the bathroom. But
Hmm.
for me, I would never use them in the bathroom because I
Hmm.
would forget about them.
Yep.
But if I see them when I'm getting ready for bed, I'll put them on my face.
That's so
So
smart.
things
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
where you say, well, what's gonna work with the way that your brain works?
Yes.
So I do that with business. I make reminders for myself. If I've got a yearly task that needs to be done, I put it in for that year because otherwise it's going to sneak up on me on the due date. And so those two books were really, really helpful, and other resources that have to do with ADHD and just executive function development.
Okay.
There's a guy named Eric Tivers who does, I think, ADHD coaching. They do body doubling, which I don't know if people will be familiar with that term, but the idea is that if there's something that's difficult to do or that you've been putting off doing, have someone sit with you while you do it. They don't even have to help. You can just be chatting. They could be sitting there on their computer, but if you both have the plan that that's what you're going to be doing during that time, then you get it done. And so body doubling is something that he does and that I've taken on. And I mean, there are times when I will call my sister and I say, "Will you body double with me while I do my tax prep?"
Mm.
Or something like
Hmm.
that because I've been putting it off, and she'll use me as a body double too at that time and do something that she's needs to get done.
Yeah.
Um, so those resources have been really invaluable to me. A book you recommended, one that starts with an E, 2 years ago.
Essentialism. I
Yes,
recommend
essentialism.
essentialism to
That
everybody.
was
So
really helpful too.
yeah.
I think for me, just being able to recognize not needing to do it all,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm. Hmm.
trying to simplify life
Hmm.
is a really good thing, especially for in my mind, my brain is always going a million miles a minute. It's hard for me to slow it down, and having routines and just a simple, calm life around me is
Hmm.
something I'm trying to cultivate.
Yeah.
You maybe would not be able to tell if you came into my house that I was trying to cultivate simplicity, but it has gotten a lot simpler
Hmm.
because it's so important to really boil down what's important to you in life
Yeah.
and to focus on those things, not
Hmm.
to do
Hmm.
things out of obligation, whether it be what you spend your time on, taking your kids to certain events that you feel like they really should go, or
Right.
whether it be for me, it's really been important to say what's going to work for me in my house if if I need to put my skincare on
Yeah.
the bedside table or
Yeah.
my dresser or whatever. Not trying to fit into somebody else's scheme of
Hmm.
what success looks like. Not feeling bad because you can't keep up with what it seems like other people do because
Yeah.
often they're not actually keeping up with everything.
Correct. Yeah.
They're either spinning their wheels trying
Yeah.
or just you sometimes you see a snippet and you think, oh, they're doing everything, but
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
probably posting about the one day that they
Oh,
got it all right, right? Because they're so
absolutely.
excited.
when do I think about post? I'm like, ooh, I should post this because I did it right. And you can see there's
Exactly.
long stretches in my social media where I don't post.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And it's you're just trying to make it
yeah,
work. Those are the things that pop out, but
yeah.
there's been lots of important things I've taken in.
One of the things that I love about essentialism, there's so much there. I mean, just get the book, read it. I recommend it to everybody, but is he talks about the one decision that makes a thousand decisions. And so by, for example, putting things on your calendar like preemptively and saying, I'm blocking out time for this, then you're saying this is, so if something else comes up, it's like, no, I can't do that because I've already prioritized the things that matter most. And, even something as simple as you and I have been saying, we need to get together for coffee more. We love getting together for coffee, but it just wasn't happening. So at the beginning of the year, we put it on the calendar for the whole year. We put our coffee dates and, guaranteeing that once a month, you and I are going to get together for coffee. And it's like,
Right.
man, by doing that, it took like 5 minutes and we just settled that you and I will meet for coffee 12 times this year. And that's awesome. So,
Yeah, and I love that you don't have to look back and say, I really wanted this for my life this
hmm
year, or I
yep,
wanted to have more coffee dates with Christy or friends or
yep,
whatever. But
hmm
it's happened almost without thinking about it because you made a
hmm
decision in the
yeah.
beginning.
Yeah, yeah, it's proactive versus reactive. And if we get more proactive with everything, including, the tasks at work and things like that. And I love that you talked about how you're removing obstacles to getting the things like you want to I mean, something as simple as prioritizing skincare. I got there in my 40s where I was like, I got to start getting on this, right? Like, because time is moving. And so, yeah, where to put it. And I have my night cream on my bedside table too, because if
Yeah.
I don't, I will forget to put it on because it's just how it goes. So I'd love to have you on again to get into some of the things that we touched very briefly on, like homeschooling and running a business. Because I have several questions, but I want to keep it to a certain time and give people some takeaways. So can I have you back on? Can I presume upon you to do
I
this
will
again?
allow it.
Okay. I love it. I love it. So some of the things I'm going to put in the show notes, all of the books that we recommended today, and just some of the ideas and concepts. But one of the other things that I wanted to mention is kind of this going back to this idea of doing what you can when you can to be cultivating skills and gaining knowledge that you may not use right away if you're neck deep in diapers or you are, trying to catch your kid up on reading or whatever it might be, but doing things little by little that build this skill set and build this mindset, this leadership mindset, executive mindset, that when the time comes, you have done a lot of legwork and a lot of foundation laying. I remember you telling me, and you don't have to tell me which one it was because you may not even remember it, but you mentioned a class that you took online, and it was about leadership and leading your company, and you gained so much knowledge from it. And I thought at the time, I was like, I feel like I'm getting an education just by listening to you talk
Mm.
about what you learned. And it was so inspiring to me. And so a couple things that I think we could encourage, and maybe you and I could brainstorm a little bit really quick. What advice would we give to someone listening who is not in a season right this minute where they can really go for it with their business? Maybe they are still, for whatever reason, but they want to. They have the
Right.
ambition of eventually running a company. What are some of the last minute kind of nuggets of success that you would give?
You mentioned doing what you can when you can, and that was something that we had discussed the other day over coffee. That concept for me, it's interesting because in the past, there have been times when I thought I can't do that because of this hyper focus sort of, difficulty switching from one thing to the other, or wanting to do what's right in front of me. That was a hard concept for me, but I realize as I look back that it doesn't always look the way that you envision it will look. And so
Hmm.
for me, I've heard people saying, taking little snippets here and there. I can't do snippets. I do chunks,
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we had discussed was when my husband was working and he had a couple of weekdays off every week. I think he was during part of the year he would have like Wednesdays and Thursdays off instead of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take one of those days and I would go somewhere else, a coffee shop. We had a Wegmans and they have an upstairs where you could go and just like, I would sit there all day and learn and develop ideas, and it was great. And it was a huge sacrifice. But when I think about the skills that I gained during that time, and to be quite honest, sometimes I didn't know what the big picture purpose was for those
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
But it felt important. It felt important for me to take some time to learn how to do marketing online, to learn how to, create a website. It felt really like it mattered a lot. And I thought,
Yeah.
I don't know if the endeavor that I'm in right now is going to pan out, but the
Hmm.
skills I'm learning will matter.
Yep.
And so that's what I would do. And then when I look back and I see how I've used all those things were foundational to the way that we were able to get our business up and running and just thriving
Yeah.
so quickly, and in a way that many businesses of our type can't, because it's often just a guy.
Mm.
They don't
Hmm.
have a business partner who has
Hmm.
the administrative and marketing skills and sales skills. And so we have that partnership. And so for us, that's been amazing to be able to look back and say, this was from that intentional, really doing what you can when you can, that I was able to develop these skills. And they've that this partnership my husband and I have has been able to change our family. It's changed our
Yeah.
future
Hmm.
financially. And it's changed us a lot. Is like, you were saying, I have become, out of necessity, a leader, an executive of this company
Yep.
along with him, that we needed groceries, we needed a house, we needed to pay our bills.
Hmm.
And it's been really fulfilling to see how just living with intention and learning things as we could
Yep.
has
Yep.
allowed us to then use these skills to start a business that has supported our family and supported other people's families as we've
Hmm.
been able to hire people.
I love it. I love it. It reminds me of the author. There's an author, L.A. Chandler is her name, and I actually knew her before she was published. I think I read one of her first manuscripts of her first novel that ended up being published, and now she's quite a successful novelist. But she started her writing career while her kids were very small. We lived in Manhattan. I worked with her husband, and she would once a week hire a babysitter to go to, and she for 2 hours the babysitter would stay with her kids. So they weren't even in school yet, I don't think. She would go to Starbucks across the street, and for 2 hours she would write. And
Mhm.
that led her to her first manuscripts.
Wow.
And the book is now I'm drawing a blank on the title. I'm sorry, friend, if you happen to hear this, but I'd love to have her come on and talk about it because she actually wrote a book called Fight to Keep Creativity Alive.
Hmm.
And it was a book written out of her own battle to, because she stayed home with her kids, but, to find ways to cultivate that creative spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit, and that when the time came, all these little bits kind of accumulated together to lay a groundwork for her to really run once she didn't have the constraints of being home with her kids anymore.
Right.
And, in saying that it's a constraint, it's not a negative thing. It's just is.
Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
just the reality.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love this. Okay, there are so many more things that I had on my list to ask, but this has been such a rich conversation, and I know that folks listening will be able to take a lot from it. So the big question for you, if you're listening, and this is kind of where you're at right now, is what can you be doing right now? This is not putting pressure on you, but just saying, what could you be doing right now? Whether it's taking a day here and there, or hiring a sitter for a couple hours at a time, or just listening to podcasts while you're doing laundry. That was a big thing for me. I listened to a lot of business podcasts while I was doing laundry or house cleaning, or, all of the tasks, or even out on a walk, pushing the stroller, baby's asleep in the stroller. I've got the podcast going. What can you be doing to kind of build yourself up and be gaining skills and knowledge so that you're able to launch into your next chapter and grow into your business leadership, all of that. So, Sandra, thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's always awesome to spend time with you, and I appreciate all the complimentary words you said about me, and I hope I can live up to them as I grow.
I love it. I love it.